Welcome to part 30 of this video series. Today I'm going to be discussing living on a boat for free. Well, in theories anyway. And a special thank you to those who already liked and subscribed to this channel. And I also want to give a super thank you to those who gave me a super thanks. It's continued support from viewers like you that keep the creation of this video series going. If you haven't done so already, then please remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos in this series. Most people would now argue that living on a boat for free is practically impossible. And while it's definitely very improbable, I'd like to see just how close I can actually get to free and what that would look like in real life. But to do so, we need to tackle 5 major issues first. Some of these issues are not particular to living on a boat and will be an issue in everyday situations like how to get food. Other issues are very particular to living aboard a boat. The 5 issues that we need to cover are: number 1, you need to find a source of free energy. Now, I'm not just talking about creating electricity, but also energy to move your boat from one location to another. Number 2, we need to find a source of free food and water. Number 3, we need to find some free docking or mooring. 4, we need to find a free way to maintain the boat. And lastly, number 5, and this one's going to make you laugh, we need to find a way to not pay for things like insurance and taxes. Right. To get anywhere close to zero on all 5 of these points, the first thing you have to accept is your upfront costs are going to be pretty high. Before we go on, it's important to note that you have to choose the lesser of 2 evils here. For example, you either buy a boat on the cheap and have higher monthly upkeep costs, or you invest heavily upfront and have less monthly recurring costs. Today, obviously, I'm talking about the second option. So what are the major expenses to making this work? You need to invest in the following things. First and foremost, a suitable liveaboard boat. Second, a solar or wind generating system. Third, a water maker. And last, a good quality dinghy. There are some quirky solutions we're going to explore for tackling the rest of the problems. Okay, so first thing we need to figure out is the boat itself. If you're planning on cruising and moving around a lot, I'd definitely consider picking a sailboat for my liveaboard boat. Fuel is expensive and motorboats use a ton of it. But if you know how to sail, and it's not that hard to learn, you can go virtually anywhere at no cost. That is, if you have the time. The wind is free after all. Sailboats are known for being notoriously expensive. However, you can get a good second-hand sailboat for a reasonable price. In fact, you can find a used sailboat for as low as $2,500. But it would probably require a lot of upfront work, and your recurring maintenance costs will also be high. To keep your maintenance costs down, I suggest buying a good, solid boat starting in the $20,000 to $30,000 price range. Oh, I should also mention solar-powered boats, but these are normally extremely expensive. These are just starting to hit the market and are mostly in the prototype and one-offs. Having said that, however, I have built and lived off one that was designed just to ply my local rivers and canals around here, but it works great for me. I'll include a link to that in the description below. Next, if you want free energy, in my opinion, solar is the way to go. Of course, it isn't free as you need to buy the system up front. But after the initial investment, your upkeep cost is pretty low. Over the last years, the panels themselves have become very affordable. However, you will also need batteries, inverter, etc. Another option is a wind generator. These are less popular as they do require maintenance, and they can be very noisy, bothering not just you, but your neighbors as well. Some liveaboards will use a combination of both, which is, I guess, the best of both worlds. Now, if you're moving virtually every day, or you're anchored where there's a really strong current, you can also use a water generator. Next, we need to talk about mooring your boat. Yes, free mooring is definitely possible. However, you will need to be able to compromise. Docking in a marina can get very expensive very quickly, so I'd want to avoid that as much as possible. So, unless you have a friend with a private dock you can use, you'll probably be anchoring. There are plenty of free anchorages all over the world. However, there are no utilities away from land, so you definitely have to be self-supporting. Plus, you need a good quality dinghy and someplace free on shore to tie it up. Obviously, a good quality dinghy is important if you're cruising or plan to anchor quite a ways away from shore. But again, having said that, for years I stayed at a single anchorage and used a cheap single sheet plot dinghy that I made for $50. And when I was on shore, I locked it up in some bushes, and rarely would anyone even see it. If something ever was to happen to it, it was only $50 to replace it. I wasn't too far from shore and rarely had to deal with waves or wakes. If you want to see it, I'll also include a link to that in the description. Okay, so let's talk about free food. This can be a difficult one to solve, but a couple ideas are harvesting your own vegetables, and the most obvious being fishing. If you put in the effort and make a habit out of putting out your lines, it's very realistic to get most of your proteins from free fish. A good tip for this is to invest in a chart plotter that also has a fish finder. I know it takes the sport out of it, but it makes it much easier to catch fish. Nowadays, this kind of technology isn't very expensive anymore. Now, another good source of free food is to have your own boat garden. At first I thought this would be impossible, especially in saltwater conditions. The main two problems are, you can only have a thin layer of soil because of the weight of it, and of course, if you live on the coast, your vegetables have to deal with saltwater air. However, there's plenty of vegetables and herbs that do pretty well in saltwater air, and you can also find a lot of small root vegetables, for example, tomatoes. Turning your deck into a decent-sized vegetable garden can definitely be done. However, it does take a little imagination and patience. Next, unless you have a free source of clean, fresh water, I'd suggest a water maker to cover your daily usage. Now, water makers are expensive and quite big and a hassle to install. But once your water maker is up and running, you'll have free filtered water for at least the coming 5 to 10 years. Now, another way to cut costs is to pay no taxes or insurance. Yeah, I know, the only sure things in life are death and taxes. But let's have a look, shall we? In North America, there are basically 3 types of boat taxes. First is sales tax and or goods and services tax. You pay these once you're buying your boat. Second is use tax. In some areas you pay just for the right to use your boat. And third is property tax. You'll have to pay this just to own your boat. But there are some locations and even dozens of states out there that don't have sales tax. Others don't use a use tax. And in some locations you don't pay property tax. So moving or buying your boat there can greatly help you get your monthly costs down to zero. Boat insurance isn't required in most U.S. states. It's entirely up to you whether you insure your boat or not. You should remember that if anything should happen, whether it be theft or a storm, your dream is over in a really big way. Also, if your boat breaks its moorings and crashes into another boat, you're responsible for both. But today we're talking about trying to hit $0. So, no insurance. Okay, I've got to be straight with you here. Boats need a lot of maintenance. We can't maintain the boat for $0. So this is where the dream dies a little bit. If we were serious about living on the cheap, we would want to account for maintenance costs. If you're tempted just to ignore maintenance altogether, there is only one possible outcome. It will be more expensive and more work down the line. So we need to acknowledge these inevitable recurring costs here. But we need to find a way to drastically reduce them. Now, there are 3 things you can do. First, you want to get a solid boat. This means you want to pay more up front, but you don't have to worry about standing rigging sails for some time to come. Second, and this is very, very important, do your own maintenance. If you don't know how, I'm sure there's a YouTube video out there that'll show you step by step how to do it. And lastly, there's bartering or exchanging services. If you need parts or hardware, maybe you can exchange something for them. If you're very disciplined at maintaining the boat, you could increase the lifespan of most costly replacements, your engine, rigging, sails, and deck hardware. This means you flush, clean, and oil your engine very frequently, and you do rust prevention on all your hardware. You repair your own sails, and you do your own anti-fouling and bottom cleaning. One last thing I need to mention, and this is where I get completely derailed. Back when I started being a liveaboard, there was no such thing as cell phones, laptops, etc. But today it's pretty hard to live without them, and there's no getting around. You just can't get service without a fee. So, we may have come close to free, but in the end, I guess there's no free ride in this world. I know there's a ton of other ideas out there, so ways to cut costs, and I would truly love to hear them. I really would. So if you have any, please write them in the comments below. Also, if you have any thoughts or ideas about subjects or ideas for future subjects that I have not covered, please let me know in the comments below. I absolutely love hearing from you. Thank you again for watching. I hope you're enjoying this video series on living aboard a small boat. If you have, then please subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Also, I included links to all the past videos in the description below. Thank you.